What up, y'all? Welcome back to the Voices of Change. How you doing, Gabe, man? What's up, man?
I'm in here live and direct. Coming from Sacramento, California. Hey, it's a pleasure to be here again.
It
I
is always a
appreciate
pleasure, man.
it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, we got a nice series we're about to do here, y'all. We're going to drop a 4-episode series. It's a historical figure series that we're doing after we just did our Roots of Resilience series. So we hope that with this series, we can, just tap into a different part of conversation and talk about some historical figures that we saw that are important to talk about and should never be forgotten in history, and kind of see how they are personal to us as well. So welcome back to the Voices of Change podcast. And the first series we're going to be talking about is the prophet of Pan-Africanism, Marcus Garvey. Imagine this. Over a century ago in Harlem, one man stood before tens of thousands, thundering, "You are not a beggar, you are a king." That man was Marcus Mosiah Garvey, born in a small Jamaican village in 1887, rising from poverty to ignite the largest black-led movement in history. He wasn't just a leader, he was a thunderclap against colonialism and racism.
And here's what's wild, right? Garvey wasn't whispering change. He was shouting it from the rooftops. Parades with thousands of people, newspapers smuggled like contraband, and a vision of ships owned and crewed by black people, connecting the diaspora. Now today, his fire still burns bright, and it's not just as history, but as a living blueprint for self-determination.
So welcome to the Voices of Change. He was the voice of change. We want to continue that legacy of Voices of Change. This is a historical figure series, and I'm Tex Wambui.
And I'm Gabriel Martinez. This is our special series where we revisit the voices of the past that have shaped our present and continue to shape the future.
And today, like we said, we are diving deep into Marcus Garvey, the prophet of Pan-Africanism. Why does his vision still echo in 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, and go on?
29,
2030. And what lessons can we take from his triumphs and even his failures?
So strap in, like our cornerbacks do, our receivers when they don't catch a ball. Strap in, buckle up, because Garvey's story isn't just history. It's power, it's pride, and perspective that's still alive today.
All right, so let's start with the spark that kind of lit this flame, right? From humble roots to like global vision, right? So let's rewind. Before the parades, before the headlines, Garvey was just a boy in Jamaica. At 14, he's working as a printer's apprentice. And here's a moment that changes him forever. He sees a black man beaten by white co-workers. That injustice planted a seed that will grow into a movement.
Yeah, and that seed grew fast, I tell you that. Yes, sir. Real quick, by 1914, Garvey in Kingston founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA for short, acronym. Get with it. In a rented room. Not exactly glamorous, right? But here's a kicker. Within a few years, the tiny star became a global movement. And by 1920, Harlem streets are filled with 50,000 Garveyites. Think about it. You got a whole gang of people named after you. That's crazy. Garveyites. And they were in uniform gleaming, bands blaring, floats rolling. Imagine Mardi Gras, but powered by black pride. And at the center of it all, Garvey's audacity, his dream, the Black Star Line. A fleet of ships owned and run by black people, linking diaspora to Africa. And he wanted to bring everything together, right? He started first with factories, newspapers, schools, built by us, for us. And he wasn't just saying maybe one day. No, he was saying right now, today, this moment, we are kings, we are queens. It's time to start acting like it.
And let's not forget the Negro World. That was Garvey's newspaper, printed in English, Spanish, and French. So powerful that colonial powers literally banned it in Africa. Like, you gotta be doing something for people to ban you. But it still slipped through like contraband, carrying revolutionary ideas to people under colonial rule. That's how you know he was dangerous in a good way for the people, because words can shake empires, but actions also followed.
Come on, now talk that talk, X. Let them know. And Marcus Garvey wasn't nothing to be pushed around. And they quote, and that's the spark from a Jamaican printer's apprentice to a global leader who dared to tell millions unity isn't optional. It's oxygen for the soul.
So if you've engaged with us so far and you're still watching this video and listening to this podcast, here's a question for you listeners. Could you imagine a Black-owned shipping empire today? What would it look like? A tech empire? A global trade network? Hit us in the comments. We want to know your modern version of the Black Star Line. Now, all right. So here's the thing about Marcus Garvey, too. His words weren't just speeches. They were fuel. So let's hit you with a few that still kind of slap with us today.
All right. So this is going to be our quote right here. We're going to start it off, and it's based on pride. Garvey once roared at the top of his lungs, "A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots."
And boom, that's the mic drop right there. Think about it. 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, and so on. We scroll trends all day, but if you don't know where you come from, you'll drift. Garvey was saying, history isn't homework, it's survival.
Now, I know they say a lot of things, right? History isn't homework, history is survival, right? But it's not about knowing where it's not about knowing where you're at, but it's knowing about where you came from and how you can keep on moving forward, right? Like I always say, we don't set ourselves up today for tomorrow. We set ourselves up today for the future. Looking at the resurgence of ancestry, similar to like DNA tests, genealogy projects, African heritage festivals, people are still hungry to understand and learn and know their roots. Garvey said it plain and simple, but he said it 100 years earlier than what we got going on today.
And here's another one, man. Garvey said, "Up, you mighty race, accomplish what you will."
Well, that's not just inspiration, it's a marching order. This line lit up the Harlem Renaissance, it fueled activists, and decades later, Bob Marley turned Garvey's energy into anthems. And you hear today an Afrobeats artist reclaiming their crown.
And that's what Garvey was really just trying to emulate and get out there to people.
Yeah, and so moving on, right? So here's one more of the quotes that clear up a misconception, right? Garvey said, "We were not organized to hate or to love any race, but to build up ourselves."
Right, and a lot of people misread Garvey as extreme, but he wasn't about division. He was about elevation. In a world stacked against Black folks at that time, and even to a certain extent, it's still kind of stacked against Black folks and some minorities, he was saying survival means building our own house.
And that's why his vision still sparks debates to this day. Was it separatism or just self-defense in a rigged system? Either way, those words hit hard.
And, these weren't just catchy lines we were just saying. There were things that were movement makers at that time and still to this day do impact a lot of people. They transformed how people saw themselves and they still echo today.
And this brings us up to the ripple effect, right? Garvey's influence didn't end with him. It stretched through Malcolm X, Nkrumah,
Kwame
Nkrumah, Bob Marley, and beyond. Thank you, Tex, for the assist. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Kwame Nkrumah was also another great historical figure, first president of Ghana.
Oh, wow. Shoot, you learn something new every day. Maybe we might have to do another episode.
And Blue Fi, too, to him.
Okay, Yeah. Okay, boy, I like that. Yeah. So, moving forward, right? And I want to touch base and dipple into the different ripples through time, focusing around Marcus Garvey. So let's talk about Garvey's ripple effect. Because his impact stretched so far beyond not just his immediacy and his own lifetime, but past his lifetime and past, where we were before, but where we are today. So
and that's facts, bro.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's facts. Some other historical figures who we'll talk about later on, X straight up called him the greatest Black leader of all time. And here's the kicker, though. Malcolm's parents, they were Garveyites. They raised their kids on Garvey's teachings. So you could argue that Malcolm X's fire was first lit by Garvey's torch.
I'm not going to lie. That is enlightening right there. Actually, I did not know that. Shoot, you learn something new every day. But one thing I will delve into is that it didn't just stop there with the Garveyites, right? Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's independence leader, Blue Phi, literally modeled his Pan-African Congress. UNIA. Yes, sir. Talk to him. Yes, sir. Back to it. But what we're going to dive into is that the blueprint traveled across the Atlantic and helped birth a free African nation. We're going to circle back to make sure that everybody got that right. So, it didn't stop there. We're going to, Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first Ghanaian, president, he was an independence leader, literally modeled his Pan-African Congress on Garvey's UNIA. He took the entire strategic model and then made it his own. But it didn't just stay in America. It traveled across the Atlantic to go and help and birth a brand new African nation, a brand new free African nation. That's powerful right there.
Yeah, man, that's true, man. And you can delve into a lot of different, perspectives and debates on philosophical approaches. And, some people are questionative if it's still effective, but who cares? It was still a historical movement that was able to continue generation on. And then you've got Bob Marley dropping Garvey's words right into reggae. You know that line in a Redemption song? Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. I can't really sing. That's straight from, that's literally a Bob Marley being influenced by Marcus Garvey, right? That's just straight Garvey right there. And the music carried his gospel around the world as well.
You talk about gospel, but it's more than just like religion. It's talking about the words that can move an entire nation, right? And even the red, the black, and the green flag you see at protests today, that's Garvey's banner. 100 years later, it's still a universal symbol for black pride and black resistance.
But here's the truth. The impact scared the systems. There was talks about how certain administrations made Garvey public enemy number one. 1923, they so-called nailed him with mail fraud charges over the Black Star Line. And by 1927, he's deported. Y'all can still go fact check me on this, but that was just based upon my understanding of reading.
That's kind of crazy when you put it into perspective, and that's, something that we always have to delve into is a difference of perspectives of these occurrences in the past, right? However, and yet, even in his exile, when he was deported, his visions lived on. The power of Marcus Garvey and his Garveyites. The system thought that they shut him down, but Garvey's ideas just spread wider across the Atlantic, across the Pacific.
Yeah, that's true, man.
Indian, across the Antarctic, all that.
And guess this, in the United States, this was during the Biden administration, I think in January 2025, President Biden finally pardoned Garvey. 100 years after those bogus charges, the U.S. government basically admitted they tried to silence him because a united black world was too powerful. Crazy.
When you put that into perspective, that is a quite astonishing feat. However, 100 years later, we could have did that 100 years prior. You know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, we'll dive back into it. And so even today, people have not stopped celebrating him. They have not stopped celebrating Pan-Africanism in regards to here in America, but across the world. Last month alone, Sacramento's Pan-African Festival at Marcus Garvey Park in New York or Jamaica's Liberty Hall, they all lit up for his 138th birthday. And his shadow is long, quite long, and his beat is still loud.
So back again here, just to all our listeners and viewers. So just pause for a second. How has Garvey's call for self-reliance shown up in your life? Is it in how you hustle, how you build community? Hit us in the comments. We want to hear your Garvey comments and moments, because Garvey was not just history. He's still right there with us in 2025. He'll still be there 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, and so on. So let's not just talk about his voice that still speaks to us today.
So here we are. And honestly, what do you think, Tex?
Yeah, when people see this, Garvey's 138th birthday, people showed out in Jamaica. Liberty Hall hosted lectures unpacking his writing in New York. Marcus Garvey Park had an event going on with jazz and poetry, and in St. Louis as well. It was a whole weekend of live music and art, all channeling Garvey's spirit to continue his legacy and showing he was a voice of change.
But you can't forget about the global vibe as well, though. It was drumming circles over in London and Lagos, artists in Queen's Park, dropping reparation-themed exhibits and digital panels streaming worldwide. And now, one thing I would like to say is that it wasn't just nostalgia, though. It was all relevant, and it all showed his relevance in today. People are turning to Garvey because the same issues, economic squeezes, cultural identity battles, inflation, are still with us.
Exactly. And in a time where folks are debating equity in tech, ownership in business, and global black solidarity, Garvey's mantra, build your own table, hits harder than ever. Look at black entrepreneurs in crypto. Look at Afrofuturists collectives. We can even say, look at BLM's international reach. It's Garvey's blueprint, just in a modernized way.
And that's interesting. If you give Marvey the mic in 2025, right? I think something that he would say, it would be along the lines like this: the revolution isn't tweeted, the revolution isn't Snapchatted, nor is this revolution on TikTok, but it's built. Because social media sparks conversations, but Garvey believed in institutions like schools, companies, ships, papers, etc. that last.
That is very true. The foundation, brick by brick. So here's another thought, is where do you see Garvey's blueprint alive today? Is it in business, music, activism? Drop a comment in there. We want to hear your take on this when y'all get a chance to see this. And of course, Garvey wasn't all praise. He stirred plenty of controversy too. So let's kind of unpack the edges on that as well, right? So here's the thing. No giant comes without controversy. With great power, they say, comes great responsibility. And Garvey was Garvey was no exception, right? So
yeah, he was no exception. I will say that, right? But I would say one of the biggest criticisms of Garvey, Garveyites, and his Garveyism is that his decision to actually meet with the Ku Klux Klan in 1922. Now think about it. That sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? I agree. I think so.
Hell yeah, it sounds crazy. What?
Wow. I don't know if I'd have the balls to meet with the KKK. However, he had logic, and his logic was this. They wanted separation, the same way that he may have been viewed for separation for, his Garveyism. However, he also wanted separation. So maybe, weirdly, there was common ground that could be understood between the two parties.
And that's where folks like W.E. Du Bois came in swinging. Shout out to Clark Atlanta University. Proud alumni from there as well. W. Du Bois, got a statue of him there. He called Garvey a demagogue and said he was leading black people down the wrong path. And to Du Bois, Garvey was apparently reckless. And to Garvey, Du Bois was too cozy, I guess, with the white elites, which is still up for debate based upon your own interpretation. But that's just my perspective towards that.
I'll be honest with you, I can see both sides of that debate, as I am a sociologist that did study Du Bois' work, and I do have a wherewithal of what Garvey did and what he did accomplish, but what he also was pushing for with Garveyism and his Garveyites. But the real debate was this: do we fight to integrate into their house, or do we build our own from scratch? Do we get all our wood, all our cement, right? We build the foundation and build things up the way that we want to be, or do we go into their house, right? And so I want to make sure that we also understand this, right? Is that Garvey said, let's build on our own, but Du Bois was constantly and significantly fighting for inclusion. And honestly, the same debate hasn't gone away. It's kind of been the same across times. There's just different people leading those conversations.
Yeah, that's exactly. And you see it today, man. And whether it's about black-owned banks versus fighting for fair credit in mainstream banks, or HBCUs versus integration in Ivy Leagues, the conversation still echoes on, and it probably will continue echoing. But just knowing that the history and foundation of this, Garvey was very pivotal in this.
I like that. But to delve into another thing, here's the real nuance of that, right? Is that Garvey was naive for meeting with the KKK. Like, really, and it's a question, right? Was he naive to meet with the KKK? Or was he just really bold enough to stand 10 toes down and use every angle possible in a Jim Crow world that was stacked against him? What do you think?
It's a good question. I'll leave that to our listeners and viewers. What do you guys think? Integration or independence? Drop us your hot take, and we'll read some of those in our future episode. So yeah, that's what I think on that right now.
Yeah, drop the hot take. Let us know. We'll delve through those comments and see what we can do about bringing those comments into our future episodes, and shout them to people out as well. However, I will say though, because with Marcus Garvey, right, love or hate the guy, Garvey's ideas push boundaries, bro. They pushed it to the limit, similar to like how my kids do. We tell them no, and then they keep on doing. They just want to know, like, how far can I get without you like really tripping on me? Yeah, same way. Is that Marcus Garvey, nothing captured what he was doing more than his dream of a black-owned fleet. the Black Star Line.
That's true, man. So let's kind of now, come to the end of the Garvey conversation. Let's talk about Garvey's most ambitious project, the Black Star Line. Picture it. 1919. Got Harlem Street packed, Garveyites cheering as Garvey announces a shipping company owned and run by black people to connect the African diaspora. This wasn't just a business. It was a middle finger, technically, to colonial powers who said black folks couldn't run global commerce. And,
Now, I think about it, too, like this in our, day-to-day lives, right? Black business. It wasn't common back then. It's not common now, right? We see black owners, entrepreneurs, what have you, hey, I'll support where I can, But imagine this in a Jim Crow era. We have a black shipping company. Majority, usually, all these shipping companies were owned by, hey, I'm no historical professional, but I will say potentially white people, right? But here's the beauty in this, right? He didn't go to Wall Street for his investors. He sold shares to everyday people, barbers, maids, dock workers, and farmers. And folks put their hard-earned money and hard-earned dollars because they believed in his vision. There's crowds that lined the harbor to watch this first ship, the SF Yarmouth, sail under the Black Star Line banner. And for them, it wasn't just a boat. It was proof that black power could be real, visible, and unstoppable. Now, reality check. The ships had no issues. The ships had issues. They were old vessels, there was mismanagement, and there was sabotage. And by 1922, the Black Star Line had ultimately collapsed. But the vision, static shock. The pride it sparked outlived the company itself.
And here's a fun fact, too. That dream didn't vanish. Today, when we talk African diaspora trade, black-owned airlines, or even digital marketplaces run by us, that is Garvey echoing to us still today. So here's our question for y'all. What's the modern Black Star Line in your eyes? Is it a tech co-op, a global black-owned marketplace? Drop in the comments or reach out to us on IG. We want to see what y'all perspectives on this, because Garvey wasn't just building ships, he was building minds. And his weapon of choice, it was a newspaper called The Negro World. And awesome, y'all. It was great having this conversation today. Looking forward to our next conversation, y'all. And, we are the voices of change. So be a voice of change. Continue reading, learning, because you can be a voice of change too for yourself. Go like, subscribe, comment, share, whatever it is. And we look forward to seeing this.
Absolutely. And if you did enjoy this video, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram. Please like, comment, subscribe. You can also find us on the Alive Podcast Network. Again, the Alive Podcast Network. Black-owned, Black-operated, and Black blissfully putting out media for the masses. Nonetheless, we appreciate you guys. We are the voice to change. And what are we going to say?
Peace out.
Peace.